our presentation for Group 15. My name is Mary Gurley and my group mates are Chris, Darwish, and Roheo. The agenda for today's talk will start with a brief project overview, followed by workflow that we have been using, followed by sample opportunities we have been looking at. Next is economics and health, safety, and environmental implications of the project, followed by our conclusion, and the last slide will have references for all the pictures used. We have been working closely with our advisors toward our main goal, which is to develop a system to identify opportunities in the oil and gas business involving lease acquisition using public data.
Initially, we decided to narrow down our focus to one parish. Doing this allows us to only need access to one parish's online leasing database. So to do that, we ranked all of Louisiana's parishes by BOE, or barrel oil equivalent, which allowed us to identify which top producing parishes are within a 100-mile radius of our location. These parishes include Vermilion, St. Mary's, Lafourche, and Plaquemines.
Here's an example of an opportunity that we have found manually. Using their 10K annual filings through the SEC, we have figured out that Stone Energy Corporation is one that is struggling. And Talos Energy LLC has came to the rescue and has recently acquired them. And 9 days ago, they released a joint presentation in which they talked about where their capital allocation will be. And as you can see over here, it's going to be in offshore Louisiana and the Gulf of Mexico. Other than this, Stone Energy's wells are located in clusters of 8, some in North Dakota, some on the Texas-Louisiana border, and as you can see here, a majority of the others right here in offshore Louisiana. However, there is one outlier well in the Vermilion Parish of Louisiana. And not only does it have expired permits, but it has wells around it that are producing quite well. And one example right here is by 5Jab Inc. It's producing about 246,000 barrels of oil over the last 19 years, which comes out to about 40 barrels a day, which basically tells us that there's an opportunity there. And now the question becomes, how can we reverse engineer to automate this process? How can we find a data algorithm that we can feed our tool to exemplify and find a bunch of opportunities like this?
Now that we understand the process, let's talk about the economics of the project. So we based our cost to do this project on the cost of our subscriptions. And so let's just talk about the cost to run these subscriptions by a year basis. So the first one we're using is we are using Drilling Info, and we value that at about $1,000 per year to use. But because we're students, we've obtained access for free. So that's a large cost savings. Another website we're using for data acquisition is Sunrise, and Sunrise is free to the public, and so we're taking advantage of that, and we're using the data we find there. Another thing that we have to use is these clerk of court websites to get the leasing information. And right now we value that at about $1,200 a year for subscription, but we're currently negotiating and trying to get student access for cheaper or for free. And then lastly, we're going to have to use Adobe for our image recognition software to read these leases and pick out the things we want so we don't have to go through manually. And currently that we value that about $600 a year, and we currently have student access, so we're getting that for free. So that's really good. And so now that we understand a little bit about how much this is going to cost for us to do, let's talk about the HSE impacts. And so one of the main things that this project will allow is for environmental protection, and that we're creating a smaller footprint on the land that these wells will be drilled. So here, the red and the blue are two separate companies that each own half of a 2-mile by 1-mile section. Each company might want to do 9 wells to fully develop this asset, but they can't. They have to do 1-mile by 1-mile spacing. So, through unitization, which is one of the things we talked about previously in this presentation, we can take and we can do a 9-well density but still reach each part of the reservoir, which is good because we're using less fossil fuels to drill these wells and to complete them, and we have smaller and fewer pads. So now that we understand that, let's talk about moving forward. So moving forward, we still have to identify a parish, and we're currently working on that. And then once we have identified our target parish, we need to acquire the online access and the data. Once we have done that, we have to begin our data acquisition. And first, we have to continue to pull this data from these websites, also taking lease data. But to get the data from the leases, we have to be able to use image recognition software. That's where Adobe comes in. And it allows us to use something that they call optical recognition characteristics. And then lastly, one of the things that we're going to look into is production optimization if time permits. And that's finding wells that need production optimization. And that takes pressure in production, so we're still working on how we might get that data. But it's something in the ballpark, and we're currently looking at it. And then lastly, we're just going to continue to look into these leasing opportunities. And so we have a couple meetings scheduled. One with a operator who runs independently. We're going to talk to him, see how he does it, and just kind of get some advice from him. We're also planning on meeting with a law professional, either here at LSU or through an LSU connection. And then we're going to continue to work closely with our advisors up to this point.